All right, and we will go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Jackie Heaney, and I'm the coordinator for the Healthy St. Mary's Partnership via the St. Mary's County Health Department. Thank you for joining us today for the next session in our Eat, Live, and Be Healthy webinar series. I'm really excited to have Erin Jewell here from the University of Maryland Extension to talk about intuitive eating with us. Just some tips for participation. These recordings will be available on our website following the event tonight. If you're viewing live with us, please post questions at any time into the comments, either on Facebook or YouTube. And we'll be monitoring those throughout the session and be answering them at the end there. And if you're viewing the recording, feel free to join us via email with any comments or questions that you have, and we will get back to you with that response. And on that note, I will throw it over to you, Erin.
Thanks, Jackie. All right, let me share my screen, guys.
There you go.
Okay, so hopefully you guys are seeing the intuitive eating front page. But my name's Erin Jewell. I work for the University of Maryland Extension, and I am a family and consumer sciences healthy living educator. So what that means is I go out into the community and I talk about different nutrition, food safety, and wellness topics. And part of my background is in nutrition and dietetics. And so I'm really excited. I'm very passionate about this topic tonight of intuitive eating. And I wanted to just start off with a little statistic that I discovered, which was the 3 top related health New Year's resolutions for this year, 2021, were people wanted to exercise more, eat healthier, and lose weight. Now, as a registered dietitian and healthy living educator, I'm a big proponent of people wanting to make healthy lifestyle changes. But I hope that tonight's presentation on this intuitive eating mindset will give you a new way of looking at your health and wellness, which does not focus on dieting or exercise in order to lose weight. So this is kind of just the overview of what we're going to be looking at tonight. So I'm going to first start off by asking the rhetorical question of what determines when and what you eat. And then we'll define healthy eating in a specific way tonight. And then we'll look at some barriers that may prevent a person from this definition that we say healthy eating is tonight. And then at the end, we'll kind of look at some different practices that you might want to try at home, which can benefit your overall health, which tie in with this message of healthy eating. And then, of course, with any program, I would love to hear your feedback on my teaching and just the content itself.
Hey, Erin, real quick, we are not seeing when you're moving slides right now. I'm seeing your PowerPoint app open on your computer screen.
Okay, give me 1 second. I knew this was going to happen. Let's try this again. Okay. So I am on an objective slide.
There you go. Yep, that's perfect.
If I move backwards, do you see the overview slide?
Yep, you should be good to go now.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, guys. I was telling Jackie, this happens to me every time I try a new platform, is it never shows my presentation correctly. So just stop me if this happens again. But so hopefully my hope is by the end of the presentation, you guys will have discovered why you choose to eat when you do and what you do. And you're going to be able to identify some personal barriers to this definition of healthy eating that we're going to set tonight. And hopefully you have some takeaways and you're interested in trying some of the practices that we're going to talk about and experiment with some of them at home so that you can benefit your overall health. So let's start off with this rhetorical question: what determines when and what you eat? So how do you know when to start eating? Is it that you get some sort of hunger signal, whether that's like a rumbling stomach, maybe you get a headache, or you feel kind of moody, or you just feel generally like fatigued? Maybe you start to eat based on different emotions. Like a lot of us can probably relate to eating when we're bored, or maybe you've been upset or you're celebrating something, or maybe you're even kind of anxious and stressed, and that determines when you start to eat. Is it the time of day? Like, right at noon, it's the lunch hour. Or you're on a specific diet and you're only allowed to eat at certain times of day. And then perhaps it's a special event. And so you decide, okay, this is a treat. I'm going to eat at this point because I don't do this that often. And then how do you know?
Sorry, everyone. It looks like Erin, I know there's a big storm rolling through. There she goes, coming back through.
Everyone. Sorry. Yeah,
no worries.
My internet just cut me off from that, so I'm going to keep my webcam off. I don't know if that's actually going to help, but we'll see how it goes.
No worries.
Okay, so we were just talking about how do you know what to eat? Do you seek nutrition advice from a healthcare team? Or maybe your family and friends play a big influence on what you choose to eat. Maybe they're following a certain diet trend, or they recommend like a recipe to you. We get a lot of information from the media about food that we should and shouldn't include in our diets. Or maybe you eat based on what sounds satisfying in that moment. And then maybe you also choose to eat based on convenience or different foods or ingredients that you're familiar with. And then the last rhetorical question is, how do you know when to stop eating? Do you get a sense of fullness? Like you start to feel a little bit content, you feel refueled, your mood improves? Or do you know when you hit the end of the plate, your plate is empty, that it means it's time to stop eating? Again, maybe you're on a specific diet regimen where you portion out your meals. And so when you've eaten an entire portion, that means you stop eating. Or maybe it's pressure from family, your friends, or even yourself of, I probably shouldn't have another helping of this. And so that is what determines when you stop eating. So for this next question, I'm going to ask you guys to participate, and fingers crossed with this technology stuff. But you can participate in two ways. If you have a smart device and you would like to text in a live response, you're going to text the number 22333, and the message you will send is Erin J 789. It'll say you've entered my session, and then when I pull up the next screen, you can send in a response and it'll appear live on the screen. Or you can go to the website pollev.com/ErinJ789, and you'll see this question pop up, and then you can respond, and it'll show everyone's responses anonymously, but we can all see what you guys are thinking. So again, these instructions are at the top of the screen right now, but what I'm asking for you guys to do is to tell me, how would you define healthy eating? So hopefully we see some responses coming in soon. You can either text in your response or you can respond via that website. And this is anonymous, so no one's going to know who's saying what. It's just going to pop up with your response. And so this could be a definition you've created yourself, or you've heard others say, oh, healthy eating is this. Consuming the proper portion amounts and limiting junk food items. Okay, thank you for sharing that. I hear that a lot, especially the term junk food and portion control. I'll wait a little bit longer. Clean carbs, portions no bigger than your fist, fruit, protein. Okay. Consuming foods that are nutritious for your body. Okay. So that one's a little bit more general. The other ones have to do with like specific food groups or controlling portions, maybe limiting those favorite items that we all love. I'll just wait just a little bit longer. I know sometimes getting onto a new system can be a little tricky. The proper organic fruits and veggies. Okay. I've heard that one too, like a lot of clean eating. So organic, no tampering with in the whole process of the growth of fruits and veggies. All right. So these are some pretty good definitions. I've heard a lot of these are like bits and pieces kind of brought together. And I want you guys to keep these in mind because we're going to define healthy eating a little bit differently tonight than maybe what some of you have heard. But we're first going to start off with Oxford's definition of the word diet. So there's a couple definitions, and the ones that I really want to focus on are this second noun definition and the verb, just because they're pretty much the same thing. And that is a diet is a special course of food to which one restricts oneself either to lose weight or for medical reasons. And the reason I'm focusing on that is because I often hear people using this second definition much more than the first. And from a young age, we are told a lot of mixed messages about healthy eating and how we should look, which makes it really confusing on what advice we should follow. And so a lot of these definitions of healthy eating, and I would even say some of the ones that you guys just brought up, use a lot of dieting terms. They use a lot of focus on weight loss and how we should look and what we should put in our bodies to feel our best. And so that includes a lot of rules and potentially some restrictions. But unfortunately, these rules and restrictions and focus on weight loss, it doesn't know your personal preferences. These rules and restrictions don't know your schedule. They don't know your medical history, your self-esteem. They don't know if you've exercised or how hungry or full you are. And I've also found that when we focus kind of on this weight loss mentality and some of these other factors, we downplay other really important feats and healthy changes that you might be making. Like maybe it's really tough for you to try new foods, but you're actually trying more variety. But if you find you're not losing weight, you're going to think this isn't working. This healthy eating stuff, like it's just not working for me. The other thing, and I think a lot of nutrition professionals kind of downplay this, is when we focus on these elements of weight loss, we increase our risk for developing a really unhealthy relationship with food, our bodies, and exercise. So again, instead of teaching you guys about like specific nutrition advice that you can find on some credible sources, we're going to discuss this different way of thinking about what you choose to eat, when you choose to eat it, and how you view your diet, that first definition, to achieve your overall health. So this is tonight's definition. It's fairly straightforward and simple, but we're going to define healthy eating with these 3 bullet points. And the first is to eat a variety of foods. And variety means things like fruits, grains, dairy, fats, vegetables, protein, and even play foods. Now, I noticed in one of your definitions that you guys included the word junk food. I prefer the term play food because I think junk food gives like a negative connotation that if you like one of these more calorically dense or not as nutrient dense foods, we feel a little bit guilty and kind of ashamed, like admitting that to people that we're eating that. Or when we do give in and we eat those foods, we feel bad because junk food kind of sounds like it's garbage, like it's doing harm to our body. Whereas play foods can be incorporated into your diet and you can live a very healthy life and you're going to feel satisfied and a lot better that you can eat things in moderation. Eating variety, I wanted to say, means that we're getting a variety of foods on our plate and we're not focusing on just one thing on our plate. So if you can imagine, if you just ate veggies all the time, you would probably not feel very satisfied. You'd probably get hungry pretty quickly and you'd be craving a bunch of other foods that you're just not eating. And then on the flip side of things, if you just had all play foods, you might feel pretty lethargic. You might lose a lot of energy. You might feel like a sugar rush, or you just might feel bleh. So we're trying to eat variety so that we can fuel our bodies the best. And then the second part is we're going to eat to feel satisfied and energized. So this involves kind of two things. We allow ourselves to eat foods that we enjoy, but that also make our body feel good. So we're going to create this healthy relationship with food, and choose those play foods without feeling guilt or ashamed. And then this last part of the definition is eating based on hunger and fullness cues. So again, trying to avoid skipping over meals or eating based on a schedule. So we start to eat when we feel a little bit hungry, and we slow down and we stop eating when we've reached that point of fullness, that content feeling. Okay, so this is tonight's definition of healthy eating. And now we're going to go through some of those barriers that prevent us from achieving this definition. And we're going to first start out by talking about hunger and fullness. So hunger is a natural biological cue, and it's our body's way of telling us, hey, you need to fuel up, you need some energy, you need sustenance. And so these pictures that you're seeing are visual representations of different reasons why people get hungry. So in the top left, people who chronically are on diet after diet, they tend to fall into a lot of rules and restrictions that tell you what you can eat, when you can eat, and that can leave someone feeling hungry. The bottom left, for those of us who have really busy schedules, sometimes we go for hours without eating, which can leave you feeling hungry. That top middle picture is rice cakes. And so that just shows there are some foods out there that are just not filling in nature. So there are other things like fats and protein and fiber that are going to leave you feeling fuller longer, and not as hungry as quickly. Exercise is being represented in that bottom middle picture, and that definitely can leave a person feeling hungry because we've just used the energy from our food. And then different medical conditions. So we see this pregnant woman, but there's other conditions like diabetes and thyroid disease that can leave people feeling hungry. So I want you to imagine if I told you, okay, for the next minute and a half, I want you to hold your breath. And then after that minute and a half is up, you're going to gently resume breathing. I think most of you, one, I've tried it before. I can barely make it to like 30 or 40 seconds. So if you can make it past that, I'm impressed with your lung capacity. But two, you'd probably, even if you could hold your breath for a while, you would be breathing kind of heavy, maybe even gasping for air. And that's what happens when we let ourselves go too long without eating, is we develop this primal hunger where it's not reasonable for us to just have a moderate portion. We're probably going to eat anything in sight very quickly, and we may even overeat because we're trying to feed a starving body. The other thing about hunger is our bodies can be tricked into not feeling hungry. So if you can relate to this, I know I did for a time in my life, and I would hear this from a lot of people where they would say, I'm just not hungry in the morning. And what's usually happened in those situations is their body has gotten so used to not eating in the morning, or they've fed themselves some sort of air food or air drink, like coffee is an example, where you don't feel hungry anymore. You just kind of, your hunger cues go dormant at that time. So what I generally recommend to people is to try and eat every 2 to 4 hours to reinstate those hunger cues so that you and your body can develop this trust that says, hey, I'm going to give you food. You can tell me when you're hungry, and I will feed you when you feel that. Now, on the other side of things, we have fullness. And I meet a lot of people, and I, for a point in my life, was like, I don't really know when I feel full. I just know I go from being hungry, and then at some point I feel kind of like overly full. And it's very normal because we live in a very distracted, fast-paced world. So we eat all the time when we're doing things. We eat in front of the TV. We eat while scrolling on social media. We eat while we're working. We eat while driving. We eat while doing chores. And you guys can probably think of lots of other examples. So it's very common for us to not recognize or feel fullness. And the other issue we have is, I know I used to be part of it, sometimes am, but a lot of us may be part of that clean your plate club where, again, what determines when you stop eating is an empty plate. And the problem with that is if we wait until our plate is empty, you're going to push yourself past feeling full. You may not recognize that you're past that point, and then you feel sick, and you're just doing a disservice to your body. So this is a scale and kind of a tool you can use to gauge how hungry or full you are. And it ranges from 1 to 10. And 1 is representing that starving, hangry phase where this is that primal hunger. You would eat anything in sight and you would eat tons of it. And then 10 is the holiday dinner full where you try everything, you have to have seconds and thirds, and then dessert comes out, and then you feel so sick and nauseous, you're loosening your belt because you've just overfilled yourself. So you're aiming for kind of somewhere in the middle where you want to start to eat when you're just a little bit hungry, and then you want to slowly eat and enjoy your food and start to stop when you feel kind of satisfied, content. Okay? Okay, so we're going to see if this works. Again, we're testing out a lot of technology today. But hunger and fullness feel very different for each individual. And so you're seeing on this screen like a table that has different descriptive words for hunger and fullness. But I'm going to play this Snickers ad who ran a series of commercials about hunger and fullness. Or I'm sorry, about hunger. But let me first make sure my volume is up. Okay.
Hey, Tony, pick it up. I want this whole row finished. You know, I'm just not feeling the wood cutting thing today. I don't know. Hey, Don, what is the rush here? Is there like a worldwide shortage of gazebos?
Tony, eat a Snickers.
Why?
Because you get a little bit whiny when you're hungry. Better?
Better.
Hey, my back hurts. Now my front hurts.
You're not you when you're hungry. Snickers satisfies.
Hey.
I always find those commercials so funny. So hopefully you saw that. If not, go look up the Snickers commercials. And basically the message is you're not you when you're hungry. And so I would say the same is true for hunger and fullness a little bit. And like I said, people experience hunger and fullness very differently. Some feel it as more of a physical symptom. So they feel it in their stomach. They feel maybe a headache. They feel fatigue in their body, maybe even like an inability to focus. And others feel hunger and fullness as more of like a mood changing symptom where, as we saw in this commercial, you know, he was just kind of whiny. They were complaining. As we saw on the hunger fullness scale, maybe you get hangry where you get like upset with people. And so those are some things to pick up on, that maybe your stomach's not rumbling, but you're starting to feel a little bit of a headache, or you feel agitated and nothing else is going on. And so use these descriptive words to figure out ways that you experience hunger and fullness. And you'll notice too that some are a little bit more strongly worded than others. And that's going to depend on how hungry or full you are. Oops. We don't want to scroll in the video. We want to scroll. Okay. So the next question I have for you guys, if you want to text in your response or if you want to answer via the webpage pollev.com/AaronJ789, what are some forbidden foods that people give up? So you've heard of them, you've forbid them yourselves. So things that people say, you know, I'm not allowed to eat this, or you might hear them sometimes be called like a guilty pleasure, or things just people restrict. Fried foods. Okay, definitely I've heard that one too. Baked goods. Sorry, I forgot. This is a word cloud. So pizza, carbs, sweets. Okay. Ice cream, I think, is in there. Yep. Definitely. I've heard of many of these. And so, chips. Yep. Carbs, desserts, potatoes, soda. Definitely. These are all great examples of forbidden foods. So I'm going to flip to the next screen. And these forbidden foods are actually a barrier to healthy eating. I know that sounds kind of contradictory, but hear me out for a second. Because unfortunately, when you hear a lot of nutrition advice, there's probably really good intentions. People have your best interests in mind when they're advising you to make healthy changes. The unintentional harm with a lot of nutrition advice is things are labeled as good and bad, as healthy and unhealthy. And that creates this idea that we must give up, restrict, or forbid certain foods. And the problem with that is we just kind of looked at a little bit of like the biological response of our body when we deprive ourselves of food. So if we go without food for a while, we get that primal hunger. But there's also a psychological effect. And what happens is we become obsessed with that particular food. So let's take this delicious looking cookie on the screen. Or we become obsessed with food itself. We think we're going to label things. They go in a column. They're either healthy or they're unhealthy. I can have these foods. I cannot have these foods. And this leads to these feelings of guilt and shame, because when we eventually have this cookie, we might think, I've eaten something on the forbidden list. I messed up. And a lot of people will say, I'm going to go crazy and eat a ton of these cookies because I never allow myself to have these. So I'm going to encourage you to do a couple things. One, try not to label foods as good and bad, healthy and unhealthy. And I know that's hard to do. And then the other thing is to give yourself what's called unconditional permission to eat these foods. So that means you can have them when you like, however much you like, but you have to really sit and enjoy them and ask yourself, do I really like the taste of this? Do I like how it makes my body feel? And would I choose this again? So let's say you were like, I'm going to have this cookie for breakfast. You were giving yourself permission to do that. You might assess, does it taste good? Do I like how it's making my body feel maybe a couple hours after having it? And would I choose that again? You might find that it's really not a great cookie. It just wasn't well made. It's stale. And so you wouldn't make that choice again. And a lot of people get nervous when they hear this. They're like, if I give in to forbidden foods, I will overeat them. I'm never going to stop eating them. But there's this really cool phenomenon that happens called the habituation effect. And it's the same thing as the first time you fall in love or when you get a new car. And there's lots of other examples. But you probably know what I'm talking about. So let's say your significant other says, I love you for the first time. You can remember the butterfly feelings. It's magical. It's super exciting. Same thing when you get a car. It's like, this is new to me. This is fantastic. I'm going to keep it in pristine condition. But then a few years down the road, if your significant other says they love you, you're just like, yeah, of course you do. Thanks. Or your car, you kind of are like, I kind of forgot when I got my oil changed last and I haven't cleaned it in a while. There's like food packaging, sitting in my passenger seat. So it just becomes meh. It becomes unexciting. It becomes your normal. So that's what we're trying to do with these forbidden foods, is just make them neutral. We're not trying to overeat them to the point where we feel sick and nauseous and hate seeing them. We just want to create almost like this leftovers feeling where, yeah, it was really exciting when we first had them, but I can have them when I want and enjoy them. And I know like when they make my body feel good and when it's like a satisfying experience, but otherwise I could just, I don't need them all the time. So that's kind of this mentality of unconditional permission and making peace with food and avoiding these labels of good, bad, healthy, and unhealthy. And kind of what plays into these forbidden foods is what's called the food police. And these are like the thoughts and the rules that we grow up hearing in our culture from family and friends, from different media sources that tell us what we should eat and why we should eat those things or not eat those things. And so here's some examples of different messaging that you may have seen or heard that kind of are shaping our food thoughts and maybe our food rules. So there's this magazine cover. It's talking about losing weight, having a flat belly, no guilt party foods, amazing anti-aging tricks. And the saddest part of this is a Photoshop photo because pretty much all magazine covers are Photoshopped. So this isn't even what Valerie Bertinelli really looks like. This middle advertisement is for pizza, and it says, I stretch, I crunch, I have to work hard to be this thin. So it's like that subliminal messaging about the exercise that you have to do to be a certain body size. And then this last article is on superfoods for weight loss. So things that are going to boost your metabolism. And the problem with all of these messages is, again, they're creating this unhealthy relationship with food, your body, and exercise. It's saying you have to eat or avoid eating these things to look this way, and you have to exercise to also look a certain way. And so this can create and lead to body obsession. It can lead to disordered eating, low self-esteem, again, these feelings of shame, and just this it's just not a great relationship with food. You know, you should be able to have a slice of pizza without feeling ashamed or guilty. You should feel okay not having like almonds just because it's listed as a superfood. And so kind of the way to challenge these thoughts and these rules and messages is to change the way that you think about food and your decisions and how you respond to others. So I'm going to use the example. We're going to pretend we're going out to eat and we're choosing something on the menu. And instead of choosing the lowest calorie, lowest fat, lowest sugar option, I'm going to encourage you to ask, what sounds good right now and what's going to leave me feeling satisfied and content? So those two questions can kind of get you thinking, what sounds good? What is going to leave me energized? But it's also like, I'm okay having something that others might label as like unhealthy, because I know that I'm going to listen to my hunger and fullness. I'm going to really enjoy this, and I'm going to start to stop when I feel full, and I can always take it home. I can always have more of it. And then if you're kind of one of those people who thinks, well, you know, this is going to make me unhealthy. If I get off this diet, if I give in to these forbidden foods, I'm going to be an unhealthy person and I'm going to gain weight. And so think instead, I'm sorry if you guys can hear that thunder. One meal is not going to change the size of my body nor my overall health. And then if others are commenting on your choices or your body, I want you to come up with some pocket responses. So, you know, I choose not to count my calories, but instead I focus on how satisfying my meal is. Or you could even say, like, what can I say? Everything in moderation. And if you have a close enough relationship with that person and you feel comfortable, you can even call them out. I would encourage you to say things like, you know, I appreciate that you care for me enough to like speak your opinion about this, but I really don't like what you're saying, and I don't want you to be making comments about my choices or my body. You know, those are just some things you can like have in your pocket ready to go as you're challenging the food police. This next question, unfortunately, you have to go to the website, so there's not a text-in option. And so what you're going to do here is, I'm curious if anyone is willing to share. Again, this is anonymous, so you're just clicking on the pictures. If you've ever eaten in response to that feeling, and you can check multiple. So have you ever eaten when you're feeling content, when you're feeling happy, cringy, nervous, loved, frustrated, confident, disappointed, embarrassed, surprised, bored, angry, upset, rebellious, shy, and calm? So you'll see these little green, like almost Google Map markers popping up on the different emotions. So just kind of to show you guys that like eating in response to emotions is a thing. You know, a lot of people do it. It's not something necessarily to feel like ashamed about. And I just wanted to bring that to your attention and maybe get you thinking about, you know, I didn't even think about eating when I'm feeling rebellious. But then I realized, you know, I was talking to a friend and she made a comment about not even something nutrition related. And I went and grabbed a snack because I was feeling kind of sassy. So it's just getting you guys thinking about what drives you to eat and when to start eating. So again, I always hesitate labeling this as like a barrier to healthy eating, because sometimes food is something that it's someone's only option when they're coping with some really intense emotions. But I do want to talk about, if you have emotional needs that are not being met, that food is something that some people choose to cope with that emotion. So it's very clear that food has an emotional tie and has had an emotional tie since we were born. Like, for those of you who have kids, you know that when your baby cries, usually you're like, when did they eat last? And so we feed them, we soothe with food. We celebrate birthdays, promotions, victories over like ice cream or going out for drinks. So there's that emotional tie with food that becomes ingrained just over our lives. So it becomes something that's like a reward. It becomes some comfort. It becomes something we love. It becomes something we hate. It becomes something we rely on when we're going through some really intense emotions. And so it's really interesting, because we usually eat to make ourselves feel better, to feel better than the emotion that we're experiencing. But studies have shown that those good feelings that are coming from eating, emotional eating, are actually wiped out by the negative feelings that guilt and shame bring up when we're like, oh yeah, I kind of overate my comfort food and, I feel really bad now. So I'm going to encourage you, when you recognize, like, I'm eating because of an emotion, not to beat yourself up about it, not to feel guilty or shamed about it, but start to recognize these patterns. Maybe you notice a trigger that causes you to eat in response to an emotion. And so you can ask yourself a couple of questions. What am I feeling right now? There's a whole list of just different, like, kind of more broad emotions, and then they go into some more specifics. And then, what do I need right now? So even like when you feel joyful or satisfied, maybe you're like celebrating something, but you're like, I'm really not hungry. I know it's like common for people to have cake or to go out and get a dessert, but I'm just really not hungry. So do you need something? Do you need like a distraction? Do you need to do something fun? Do you need support I want support on this joyful feeling and need to hang out with a friend? So there's distraction that can address that need. There's support. There's dealing directly with that feeling, sitting there or journaling or listening to music that matches the feeling. And then self-care, setting limits, having some alone time, getting some rest. And so when you start to practice these things, you'll notice that you're like, I'm actually feeling better about not choosing food. And it makes me enjoy food more, because I don't turn to it and necessarily overeat when I'm trying to cope with an emotion. All right. And the last barrier to our definition of healthy eating tonight is disrespect of your body. And, we hear this all the time, but we just live in a world that has unrealistic body expectations, because we are constantly comparing weights. We're comparing exercise regimens. We're comparing muscle sizes. And it's really unfortunate, because this is pretty ingrained heavily, like from a young age for most of us. And it's just, a person with a shoe size of 8 shouldn't realistically think, I can fit into a shoe size of 6. And sometimes it's that way with bodies. And so this concept of respecting your body just goes back to, even if you're not happy with where you're at, if you're not happy with how you were made, if you're not happy just with your current situation, hopefully you are still treating your body with respect and giving it the necessities it needs. So this little checklist of food, hydration, sleep, movement, socialization, comfort, there's probably a lot more than I have on this list. But so just because you might feel like, I feel really heavy, you would still be giving yourself food. You wouldn't be starving yourself. You would still drink water, even if you think water contributes to my water weight. You would still rest and sleep, and you wouldn't be over exercising and injuring yourself. You wouldn't be giving up social events because you're afraid of what food is going to be served there. And again, you wouldn't be going out of your way to discomfort yourself because you're trying to look and appear a certain way. So it's kind of another little metaphor is you may not like your eye color, but hopefully you are still wearing glasses or contacts if you need them. You may not like the size of your foot, but hopefully you're still finding shoes to like put on your feet. So the way you can also respect your body is to change the tools you use to assess it. And this is really controversial, but I'm just going to throw it out there. If you determine your success based on your weight, I'm going to encourage you to throw out your scale. If you determine your success by if you fit into a certain pair of jeans or some clothing that you've been saving as like your goal clothing, I encourage you to donate it and try and dress the body that you have now and find some stuff that you love and that you're comfortable in. Because the more you practice these habits of focusing on other measurement tools of who you are and how to respect your body, you're going to end up much happier, and you're going to find that you're going to eventually love your body. And part of that can be forming positive thoughts about your body. So maybe you're like, I have flabby arms. And instead of saying that and focusing on that, that part of your body as a negative thing, try and form a respectful statement. Like I'm thankful that I have 2 arms that can carry groceries in from the car. It could be as simple as that. And then this is just a commercial that Dove came up with. I'm going to play it, but I'm going to turn the sound off and just kind of narrate. So there's this model who goes in for a photo shoot, and she goes through, so this is what she looks like on a daily basis. She goes through hair and makeup, and they're going to do her up and then take some pictures for a billboard ad. So again, she goes through hair and makeup. I'm curious how long this actually took without it being sped up. I'm sure it took a little bit of time. And then she goes through her photo shoot. And then they do the photo editing. So they drastically, it may look like small touches, but they've like elongated her neck. They've made her eyes a lot bigger. They've smoothed out features. So in the end, this is what we see, even though that's not at all what she looks like. And so it's this idea that our perception of beauty is very distorted. And so it may seem like not a big deal, but subliminal messaging can have a really harmful effect on us and how we view ourselves. Okay, so we're moving forward to just a couple things that I want you to focus on instead that can really aid you in successfully using or playing into that definition that we defined healthy eating as tonight. So the first is to discover satisfaction. And I don't know if you guys know this, but satisfaction is a really powerful motivator. So if you are unsatisfied in a job or a relationship, you probably know that you're more likely to change your situation. You're more likely to leave your job or get another job or leave your relationship. And so it's unfortunate that a lot of when we focus on like the traditional way of thinking about healthy eating is we're thinking, how do I avoid gaining weight? How do I lose weight? And we just kind of forget to enjoy these simple, the simple tastes and pleasures of eating something delicious. And so I want to kind of explain satisfaction to you guys using a couple scenarios, because I'm not suggesting that intuitive eating is like we can just eat whatever we want, whenever we want, however much. We can, eat tons of our favorite foods and never think about how our body is responding, because that's the complete opposite. And so to help you understand satisfaction, I chose this picture of pasta. Hopefully it looks appealing to you. If it doesn't, I want you to imagine like your favorite dish. You could even look at some of the plates on the table behind this picture. And I want you to imagine that, let's pretend you had unlimited access to your favorite dish or this pasta, and you could eat as much of it as you wanted, whenever you wanted it. And you would probably find over time that habituation effect phenomenon would come in to play, and it wouldn't be satisfying anymore. You'd get really tired of it. In this second scenario, let's pretend that you just weren't very hungry. You were going out to eat. A friend had invited you out, and you knew that this place served this pasta, or you saw it on the menu. And because it's a forbidden food, you never allowed yourself this pasta. But you decide it's a special occasion. I'm going to order it, but I'm not really hungry. And you know what? It's hot outside and pasta doesn't really sound good. I actually could do with something a little bit cooler. But you order the pasta anyway. And you discover that it's just not a satisfying experience because, one, you weren't really hungry to begin with. This kind of filled you up too much, and you really wanted something else. Like maybe you just wanted a drink, or maybe you just wanted something lighter. So you're not very satisfied. This third scenario is, you imagine that you knew you were going to this restaurant, and you knew that this pasta was on the menu. You've been looking forward to this. You knew it was going to be a heavier dish, and so you decide to not eat all day. And by the time you get to the restaurant, you're so hungry, you are devouring the bread they're serving at the table. Your pasta comes, you eat all the pasta, and then by the end of the meal, you're just stuffed to capacity because that primal hunger has taken over. And it was kind of a quick meal too, because you were so hungry, you just ate everything. So it's just not satisfying because you didn't enjoy it. You're feeling really sick now. Just not a great experience. And then the last two scenarios are, I want you to imagine that you're going out to eat, maybe with family, or you're on a date, or you're in a situation where something comes up and you're just uncomfortable. Like there's an awkward conversation, or maybe you don't get along with your family. And so you're feeling this discomfort, you're feeling kind of distressed. And so a way to kind of cope with that, or to avoid maybe talking or having to be a part of this conversation, is you're just eating this pasta, and you don't really enjoy it or really notice it. You're just sitting with this emotion of discomfort. So again, not very satisfying. You're not enjoying the meal because you're more focused on how you're feeling. And then this last scenario is, you decide that you're going out, you have the perfect outfit, it fits you just right. And you go to this restaurant and you choose the pasta dish, but you're like, I really shouldn't have this because it's high in fat. It's, got lots of carbs. It's really heavy. I'm breaking my diet. And also after I eat this, I'm going to feel really uncomfortable in my clothes, and I'm going to be self-conscious. So you don't really enjoy your meal because you do end up, eating your pasta, and you feel uncomfortable in your clothes, and you're uncomfortable with the choice you made. So again, all of these scenarios are just kind of to show you that satisfaction is a very nuanced thing. It takes some practice, and it really requires listening to your body and its hunger and fullness, its preferences, its to be in a comfortable environment, and respecting your needs as well. And what you will find is, if you eat and you discover satisfaction, you're going to eat a lot less and more variety than if you were to eat based on other rules and restrictions. Okay, so I know exercise doesn't always people are like, oh, well, exercise is separate from nutrition, but intuitive eating does bring that in because nutrition fuels your body, which allows you to exercise. But unfortunately, well, I'll start with, there's a lot of research that shows really any type of movement is beneficial to decreasing your risk for various diseases, for strengthening your bones, for reducing stress, for decreasing your blood pressure. There's lots of health benefits that are associated with exercise. But again, a lot of the messaging that is surrounded by exercise is losing weight or toning up to look a certain way. And that can put a lot of pressure on people, where if they're not seeing those results, they don't stick with the exercise. And so I want to shift your focus when you're thinking about enjoying a new type of exercise or something you already do. I want to shift your focus from that weight loss, from I want my body to look a certain way, or I want to compare my exercise regimen to someone else, to focus on how it makes your body feel, how it's maybe improving health symptoms, and even like your energy levels. Do you notice a difference after doing this exercise? And I love all these pictures because it's just different people enjoying different ways of moving, even little things like this girl dancing while she's listening to music. And I hope that as we enter these warm months and people are outdoors more, that you get ambitious to try some new ways of exercise that you find enjoyable and make you feel energized and stronger. And then the last practice that I want to talk about is honoring your health with gentle nutrition. And so I'd be a terrible dietitian if I said, oh yeah, you don't have to worry about like the traditional sense of healthy eating, because there's lots of scientific research that says a healthy, balanced diet can play a role in preventing chronic diseases. But I intentionally am talking about this last because it's very, very important that you have a healthy relationship with food, your body, and exercise before you incorporate these nutrition messages. Otherwise, you're just going to fall in that pattern of nutrition advice equals weight loss and looking a certain way. And also labeling things as like good and bad and healthy and unhealthy. And I'm sure many of you can think of some examples of how the science has changed, and that makes my job really frustrating sometimes. So here's one example. Back in the day, there was this big push that people were to not eat butter, and instead they were to have margarine because butter was high in saturated fat and margarine was not. But then margarine got a lot of criticism because there were trans fats in margarine. And now today we see people putting butter in their coffee. So there's just a lot of science that changes as we discover new research. And I also think that can make it confusing when uncredible sources, a lot of the media out there is skewing or misrepresenting these new scientific claims. So be really cautious when you're trying to find nutrition advice out there, because there's a lot of headlines, and especially be cautious of things that promote really quick and easy solutions, because that's often not the case. That's just not true. The other growing concern with focusing too much on this traditional definition of healthy eating is there's this term called orthorexia, which is it's not a formal diagnosis, but it's something that scientists and healthcare professionals are using as a term for a person who is so obsessed with healthful eating that it actually damages their own well-being. So they're so fixated they can't have those play foods because it's like it's going to completely instantly change their body. And so they're talking about it being a little bit more of a diagnosis in the future, but right now it's just a conversation. And then for any of those science people out there who like to talk about research, I just wanted to show you guys this really cool thing that Paul Rosen and his team discovered. They looked at 4 countries, did some comparisons, and they discovered that the United States, or America, was the most worried about their eating. They were the most dissatisfied with what they ate, and they thought of themselves as the most unhealthy. Whereas France was the complete opposite. They were the least concerned or worried about their eating. They found the most satisfaction and pleasure in what they ate, and they considered themselves healthy eaters. So just interesting to think about. And some people call that the French paradox. And so I do want to say, though, some people might be wondering, like, Erin, you're sending us mixed signals. Are you telling us to eat healthy or not? And when I say eat healthy, that like traditional definition. And yes, there is a difference between eating a handful of blueberries and a slice of blueberry pie. But you're not a bad person if you decide to eat the slice of pie. And that slice of pie is not going to automatically change your health or your size. So it's this balance of having a healthy relationship with food and eating a balanced diet as well. Again, having that foundation so that you can incorporate the nutrition advice kind of sprinkled in with what you're feeling physically. And so if you were looking for some credible nutrition advice, I'm going to recommend the Dietary Guidelines for Americans. Because this is a document that's updated every 5 years. When new research comes out, they do like an assessment, they put together a team and they create this document and they update it. And so you see the two pieces of advice of eat more of these things, eat less of these things. But I want to caution you that this document does contain a lot of diet language and weight loss language. So I'm going to encourage you first to focus on learning how to recognize your hunger and your fullness and your satiety signals, your satisfaction signals. I want you to focus on those other principles and things we talked about to have a healthy relationship with food, your body, and exercise. And then you can incorporate in this nutrition advice. So I just want to share a quick example where maybe you go out to eat, you're deciding what to eat on the menu, and you decide you want to have a burger. And you're like, well, Dietary Guidelines says eat less red meat. It's high in fat. You know, you could name all the reasons why not to have it. But instead, your intuitive eating side says, I'm actually going to allow myself to eat this. I'm going to really enjoy it. I'm going to see how my body responds to it. I can always stop when I start to feel content, take it home, or I can keep eating if I want. And I'm not going to feel ashamed or guilty because, hey, I like burgers. But same scenario, let's decide instead, you're like, well, you know, I've had a lot of red meat and it just doesn't sound very good right now. Instead, I actually am looking at this bean burger. That sounds phenomenal. Whatever sauce they've described sounds great. It's got a whole grain bun, which sounds delicious, and it's loaded with some of my favorite veggies. I'm going to choose that instead. Again, I'm going to slowly enjoy it. I'm going to start to stop when I feel full, and I'm also not going to feel guilty or ashamed for making that choice or not choosing something else. So that would be like the incorporation of nutrition advice and kind of these intuitive eating concepts that we've been talking about. All right, so I'm at the end, but I do want to bring up a couple surveys if you guys don't mind bearing with me. But this is I'll send this out or have Jackie send this out. This is to Padlet, and this information tonight has been based on 2 dietitians came up with the intuitive eating concept. They have a book and a workbook, so if you want to check out more information on intuitive eating, go to their website. The second link is if you want to see how much of an intuitive eater you are, kind of based on some of the things we talked about tonight. Here's I think it's a 21 or 23 question survey that you can take yourself. And then this third thing is to score your survey results. And then the last 2 things that I would hope you'd fill out hopefully soon, or you can even do it right now, is there's a demographic survey that just, it helps to show me like who's attended the program tonight. Am I doing a good job, making this program open to everybody? And essentially at the end of the day, extension educators report all the participants that have participated in their programs. They collectively group together all this demographic data and they send it off to a federal report so that we can receive federal assistance to offer programs like this. So I'll include these in the chat box in a second. And then this last survey sorry, we're full of surveys here with Extension, is to evaluate me as a presenter. And so both of these, I should say, were anonymous. So no one's going to know who's filling these out. But you'll come down here and you'll find my name. We're listed by last name, first name. So you'll click Jewel, Aaron. You will select today's date, July 14th. And I would classify this workshop as a wellness program. And then the next 5 statements, you're going to evaluate me. So was Erin effective in communicating the content of the program? You can pick strongly disagree to strongly agree. And I'm pointing out the the order of these options because sometimes on a rare occasion, I'll have people say, I strongly disagree, I strongly disagree, I strongly disagree. And they get down to the bottom and there's a box where you can provide comments. And the person will say, she was an awesome presenter. She communicated really well. The objectives were clear. And so I think they may have misread the scale. I also welcome good, bad, and ugly feedback. So if you strongly disagree, please tell me why. Tell me what I can improve on. Tell me what you liked or didn't like about the program. Tell me what I should continue doing because I read these and I try and change how I present so that I can become a better educator. And then you'll just say, no, you don't want to evaluate another instructor because I'm the only one talking tonight. And then you will click submit. So I will go ahead and put this in our chat. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Can I put this in the comments?
Yes, you'll just pop that in. Yeah, the comments section right there. And that'll post it, I believe, directly to Facebook and YouTube.
Okay. Let's see if I can
I hope.
comment.
Well, thank you so much, Erin. That was so much information. It was really great to hear. I think something that definitely hits me hard is that how much the media affects what we eat and how we feel about what we eat in our bodies. I think that definitely hits hard.
Definitely.
So if anybody has any questions for Erin, feel free to put those in the comments section on the platform that you're on right now, Facebook, YouTube. And we'll give Erin a few minutes to answer any questions that you have.
And Jackie, I am not seeing a text box for me to put in the comments the this link, so I think I just sent it to you if you're able to put that in for me.
Got it.
Thank you.
There you go, everyone. That should post directly for you to get to those resources. And just so when I can pop that up there, everyone can also see it on the screen now.
Thank you. I like this service. This is a neat platform.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll give a couple more seconds for anybody to pop any questions that you have in. And I will say again that if you would like, you can also email us questions, and I can always have Erin follow up that way.
And I know you have my email, Jackie, but if you, however you choose to share it, you feel free to send that out to people as well.
Okay, sounds right. Yeah, I'll do a follow-up email with everyone after the event and get that out there.
Sounds good.
All right. And if there aren't any questions coming through, I will just pop my screen back up real quick. Just with a thank you to everyone for participating today. So you know, we do have Erin back in a couple weeks here. It looks like it says July 14th. It's July 28th. Today's the 14th. July 28th, she's going to be speaking on herbs and spices. We also have a special event on August 30th where we're going to be offering for the kiddos Food Plays to Be Fit, the Juggling Nutrition Magic Show. September 30th, we'll be having, as part of our HSMP annual meeting, a morning yoga with Lori Bruce. And then we're also in the works to have some War Cycles events in person in September and October. So just be on the lookout for that. And it looks like we did have a question come through. I'll pop that one up there. So from Jacqueline, we've got, how could you present this information to someone who is homeless with health problems?
That's a really great question, and something I've contemplated a lot. And I will share with you the two dietitians who kind of created this concept, and then it's really taken off in the research. So there's been I think like almost 100 studies looking at intuitive eating. The two dietitians do a really good job addressing how intuitive eating is a little bit of a privilege, and there are some concepts that apply to everyone, and everyone is able to kind of practice. Like, we can each learn how we feel hunger and fullness, and if we're able to feed ourselves and to stop when we start to feel full. That might be difficult for people in certain situations who might not have access to food. But so there are some principles of intuitive eating that we can try and promote and encourage. But it's definitely something that it can be a little bit of a tricky situation where they're not able to practice all the principles. And actually, food insecurity can be a barrier to being an intuitive eater, because if someone's not sure when their next meal is going to be coming, it's kind of hard to practice some of those principles. So it might take, working with that individual a little bit one-on-one. And as far as the health problems go, especially if that's tied in with your scenario, Jacqueline, there's a list on the Intuitive Eating website for different professionals who have become intuitive eating certified. And so they, especially if you have a registered dietitian on that list who has specialized in this concept of intuitive eating, they're able to work with people who have certain health conditions and may have very strict dietary restrictions. Like, for example, someone with celiac disease who, if they eat gluten, it's going to be really uncomfortable. So we're not trying to say, hey, you can have gluten, just feel what your body feels. It's much more nuanced than that. And they can work with them one-on-one to kind of help them be an intuitive eater and keep their health in mind. So I hope that helped. And if that wasn't a great answer, feel free to email me and we can have more of that conversation there.
Thanks so much, Erin. Should be able to, yep, that worked. Perfect. All right, and it looks like we don't have any more questions coming through, so we will give everyone back 8 minutes of their Wednesday evening. Thank you, Erin, and thank you so much, everyone, for joining us.
You're welcome, guys. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.